From New York City. Hello, America. Tonight I want to tell you about something, and my wife was around here someplace. I don't know if she knows this, but when we were on vacation, I was secretly at night under the covers with a flashlight reading this book. She really doesn't. For some reason, she thinks I should relax and not read books about Nazis on our vacation. This came in from a viewer of mine. It's an old book from 1940, I think 43 or 44, Religion of Nazi Germany. And it got me to thinking. This is somebody who was in, I think originally in Germany and then went to Poland, and it didn't end well. And I want to do a show tonight, not on this book. I want to do a show on something that I think is critically important. I have shown you this over here. Faith, Hope, and Charity. I've shown you the Faith, Hope, and Charity. Sorry, Oscar, and everybody in the control room. They're like, oh no heavens, he's moving. I've shown you this. It's the 40-day, 40-night challenge. And what it is a blueprint for our national survival. This is what I think we need to do to be able to survive. And basically, it's that we have to have firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, the code that I think is in the Declaration of Independence. Firm reliance on divine providence. That means we can't have faith. We have to have much more than faith. We have to know personally that God is not on our side, but we are on His side. These are the steps that I ask you to take, these 4 steps, and challenge yourself to do these things in 40 days and 40 nights to help the country survive. But when I say something like that, because there is a fundamental misunderstanding of the Tea Party and small government people, that immediately goes into church and state. Well, that church and state, you can't have the evil church because those evil Christians are going to gobble up the state, and then next thing you know, you're going to have communion, 5 days a week, otherwise you'll go to jail, and I don't know what they think is going to happen. But that might happen if it was a progressive that was telling you these things. That's why Jim Wallace is so dangerous. All the preachers that surround the president, they are progressives, and they are big government progressives. When you combine church and state, and you take a big government and you combine it with the church to get people to do the things that the state wants you to do, it always ends in mass death. Now, the separation of church and state, where does that come from? What does that even mean? Well, most Americans have heard it a million times. We've heard it in our schools, and it's been misused. It's been mistaught. It's a phrase that is not contained in the U.S. Constitution. As we have discussed before, it's from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Connecticut Baptist when they feared that government might be getting between them and the way they worshiped. Because Baptists, that wasn't popular in Connecticut at the time. And he's saying, wait. Okay, so what did he mean by that? Does it mean that the state needs to be protected from the awe-inspiring power of the force? Or is it possible that the armies of marauding pastors and priests and nuns, if you see the nuns, they come after the state, look out. Could it be that the nuns and the bishops are going to suddenly, without warning, seize control of the government in some sort of creepy Christian coup? No, I don't think so. For the record, this is called the Establishment Clause. Now, why is it called the Establishment Clause? Well, it's in the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause, and this is what it says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's it. Congress shall make no law. It's simple. Not you shall not pray in public, or the people shall never refer to God within 700 feet of government property, or you'll never ever, we promise, you'll never be offended by a manger scene. No. What it says is Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. What does that even mean? You have to go back to the time period. England, what had happened in England. Why was the Black Robe Regiment so important in the Revolutionary War? Because people were going to church. But Whitefield made an impression on people because he rejected the church of the government, the Church of England. He said, this isn't about God. God needs to be between you two, God and you. The state has no place in that. England had a state church, and it went more than just the Church of England. You had to pay tithes. Well, that was a tax. There wasn't any opportunity to worship as you chose. That's why Whitefield didn't go preach in the churches. He had to do it out in the fields. And that's what our founders were trying to guard against. They knew what would happen when a state said, hey, wait a minute, we have these people who will listen to anything because they're stupid, I guess, and they'll just listen to whatever their pastor says. So if we can just co-opt the state, then we can get them to do anything. That's what they were guarding against. Almost like what's happening with social justice and the progressives. Now, the worst example of this in the last century is probably the best example of what a state interfering into religion can do. When Hitler came to power in Germany, he knew his deception of the German people would never be complete without using religion. And that's exactly what he did. Remember, Hitler learned an awful lot of stuff from a guy named Bernays. And Bernays was the guy who, when Goebbels died, they found the book by Bernays on propaganda, an American author, an American that was with Wilson, in the office of Goebbels. It was on propaganda. They say they learned propaganda. Hitler learned propaganda from the Wilson administration. Well, one of the things the Wilson administration and progressives did at the time was they knew they had to destroy our faith. They knew they needed to get social justice in there. Well, Hitler took it a million miles farther. He set out to draw Christians to him by explaining the seeds in Mein Kampf, where he spoke of the Creator and the universe and of eternal providence. He also states his belief that the Aryan race was created by God and that it would be a sin to dilute it through racial intermixing. He tried to head off church resistance by professing in a speech that Jesus was the one true God. Well, one pastor who's going to be with us tonight has told us of the story about when Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. He met with all of the leading pastors, and he openly tried to reassure them that the position of the church was secure. But he secretly was setting out to silence them. One of the men in the room was Martin Niemöller. Now, he wasn't buying it at all. He wasn't buying it, and he pushed his way to the front of the pastors. Remember, this was a spooky dude. You didn't go after this guy. He did. He went and he faced Hitler right nose to nose. And Niemöller told him, our concern here, Herr Hitler, is not for the church. Jesus Christ will take care of the church. Our concern is for the soul of our nation. Well, no one else had the guts to back him up. Hitler just smiled and said, you can leave the soul of Germany to me. Now, from that Sunday on, Gestapo agents sat in the pews and wrote down every word Niemöller said. The pastor was imprisoned in a concentration camp where he narrowly escaped his execution. Eventually, both through deception and intimidation, church and state merged to the point where the pictures of Hitler rested on the altars of the churches throughout Germany. They took the crosses down and put him up. The state had infiltrated and infected the church, not the other way around. I want to make it very, very clear. When I say that you have to find God, I am not saying that we find a state religion, and I am not saying that you mix the state with religion. I'm saying you find your principles. Teach man correct principles. That your relationship is with God, not the state. The state comes after this one. Let your principles be your guide on how to vote, not how to rule, or not how to control or manipulate people. I'll leave that to the progressives. Well, many in Germany couldn't or wouldn't believe the truth, that their faith had become evil. It had been co-opted by an evil and ruthless dictator. Others who did notice wouldn't cooperate, and they were arrested. It got much, much worse. Not only were there arrests of clergy, but incarceration in concentration camps, murders of religious opponents of the regime, physical assaults on clergymen ignored by the police. See, remember, it's almost like nudging. You nudge and then you shove. And you're going to, the farther you go, if you don't say something at the beginning, then you're watching somebody being beaten in the streets and you're like, gosh, yeah, I don't want that to happen to me. And that's what happened. They should have said something at that first meeting, and they didn't. Then there were seizures of church property, including orphanages and hospitals and monasteries and schools. Anything with a religious insignia was removed, and the teachers were fired. Here's a church. Look at all the government insignia. That's a church. Church publications were censored. They were forbidden. Attempts to force all German churches into one state-controlled church. Surveillance of the worship services and church leaders were happening. Public attacks on the church by Nazi leaders, including Goebbels and Goering. And, of course, ultimately, the persecution and Holocaust of the Jews for their faith and, I guess, for their blood type. What had begun by supposed religious people and a religious man turned into something horrifyingly different. Now, you will hear that many people claim that Hitler was a Christian. And they use Hitler to make their point about how frightening Christian fundamentalists can be. They always say this. But anyone who says that has not read history, or they have read history written by a progressive, not people who were there. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, noted in a diary entry in 1939 a conversation with Hitler. He wrote, and I quote, "The Führer is a man totally attuned to antiquity. He hates Christianity because it has crippled all that is noble in humanity." That sounds more like Michael Moore, doesn't it? Hitler's chief architect, Albert Speer, reports in his memoirs of a similar statement made by Hitler. Quote, "You see, it's been our misfortune to have the wrong religion. Why didn't we have the religion of the Japanese, who regard sacrifice for their fatherland as the highest good? Or the Mohammedan religion? It would have been much more compatible to us than Christianity. Why did it have to be Christianity with its meekness and flabbiness?" Whenever you bring up Germany and Hitler, it is the extreme. And actually, it's less extreme, believe it or not, than communism in Russia. For as horrifying as it is, it's just been our media propaganda that hasn't made us really look and really remember the Holocaust that happened in the other socialist state. The key is socialism. One never thinks or imagines that this can happen again. No one thinks it could happen here. Well, did the Germans think that it could? Did the Germans sit there at night and go, you know, that Hitler thing, that could end in concentration camps and the liquidation of the Jews? Did they really think that? Or did people say all along the way, wait, this isn't going well, this isn't us, we shouldn't go down this way. And then they were told they were conspiracy theorists. They were told that it was wrong, that they would even speak out. And then the beating started, and then the execution started, and then that argument just went away. I want you to be aware that people will say to you that I am trying to get you into religion because I want to control or manipulate you, or I want the churches to control or manipulate you. Nothing could be further from the truth. I want you one with God. I want you to have self-reliance or firm reliance on the protection of divine providence because I want you to be self-reliant.